On any given day, there are 2.7 million children who currently have a parent incarcerated in America. And over 10 million people have experienced a parent behind bars at some point in their lives. This is not a unique story. This is a part of the American story. From the lenses of young adults, this podcast explores the harm of poverty, mass incarceration, the beauty and resilient relationships, and the pain of fractured bones. Join our co-hosts as they enter the sanctuary with our guests in this episode of If Only You Knew.
What if I told you that being alone isn't everything it seems to be, right? That being alone may just separate you away from the world and actually damage you more than what you expect.
Thank you, Elias, for being with us here. Welcome to our sanctuary. My name's Zanaya.
My name is Tiana, and this is our podcast, If Only You Knew.
Good evening. I would like to say that if you only knew what it felt being incarcerated, being away from the world, separates you from everything you believe in and also changes your world completely. It started off when I was young, knowing that there's a chance that I might get locked up because everybody in my neighborhood, in my community, was destined to be locked up, be in gangs or whatever the case may be. It's something that I had to learn that it was hurting me and those around me. But I had to learn how to pick myself up and process that, right? Grow from it. When I was young, 13, right? That's when I first got locked up. I got locked up for graffiti. At that time, I took a blame for my sister. And not to say that I was
Take your time. It's okay.
Right.
I could say that I was so naive at that point. And I wasn't considering the fact that what I was doing at that point was hurting those around me, my family. Watch me get locked up, they'll probably be like, damn, why you always getting locked up? Why you always here? Why can't you stay around with the family? But at that time I would get upset because I didn't know that it was hurting them.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. But I remember the first time I got locked up, I was 18. I got sent to Rikers Island, a facility where it's meant to be for adults, right? But at the time, I was just 17, hitting 18. And for my life, I could say that I was full of fear heading over there because I never experienced anything like that. I understand I experienced juvie, I experienced precincts and stuff like that, but never like the big house. And then when I stepped in, my whole world changed. It wasn't like what you watch in a documentary where, it was the real thing. My heart started pounding. I felt like I wanted to run away, but there was no way to run away because at the end of the day, I found myself there.
Right.
But, I allowed myself to process it throughout the time and realized that it was growth, right? I had to go through stuff in order to learn the betterment for myself.
So you said that basically, it was growth, like you went in there one way. So you went in one way with those feelings. How did you come out?
Well, I've been, the first time that I did get locked up in the island, I came home more aggressive. I was so comfortable that I experienced it the first time that I was like, if I ever get locked up again, I already know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was already traumatized by that point. I didn't realize it. So what happened is that I found myself getting locked up again a month later, getting sent right back to Rikers Island. And at that moment, I realized I was becoming a pattern.
Mm-hmm. I actually have a question for you because, you just spoke about returning a month after and realizing that it was a pattern. And, this feeling of being invincible and knowing what to expect so you have no fear of going back because you already know the expectation. What made you change, or what essentially made you wake up and realize, okay, I don't want this to be a pattern, or the fact that I'm not invincible, and if this keeps on happening, I could end up wherever? Like, what made that switch go off?
Well, it wasn't until my third time that I got locked up. And I realized when I came home, like, I seen partially people that I love gone because of the time that I spent, being locked up. I seen people cut me off and disloyalty and everything. And I'm like, and I started questioning for a while. I was like, why are people leaving me? Why is everything happening like this? And it wasn't until I learned about God and, being incarcerated. I was in my cell. Someone brought me a Bible and I started reading it. Then I started realizing the wisdom that it brings within it. And so I allowed that to be my foundation, my structure to grow, Even if I didn't believe in God himself, it was a book that I could say was full of knowledge that helped me realize that I was in a path of destruction in a way, And so when I came home, I decided that I was like, yo, I'm not gonna lie. I'm really getting locked up. It's becoming a habit. Like, this is, and up to the point, I was just like, I didn't care, I was just like, whatever it is, what it is. But it was people who cared about me that I thought they didn't care about me, but they did because, I was so blind. So they were like, yo, we got programs that can help you and stuff like that. And at first I was denying it, obviously. I was like, nah, I'm good, I'm chilling. But I was like, one day they invited me to this program and, they told me, yo, tell your story, say who you are. And I wasn't afraid to speak up. So I was like, you know what? My name is Elias Hernandez and I'm a gang member, right? I said it proudly. I represented what I was doing. But I didn't know that saying that and being me was gonna open so many doors. That's because I allowed myself to be who I am and fully embrace it.
Yeah.
You
can go ahead.
So I just want to say, like, thank you for, acknowledging that. I'm glad that you acknowledge within yourself that, this is who I am. And I'm not ashamed to say that because it's in the past. I did things in the past I'm not proud of, but this is my future and I'm moving forward with it. So I feel like that's very important for young men in our community to understand that we make mistakes. Things happen, but life does go on and you do have to open up sometimes in order to let people help you. Because I know you were probably thinking, if I didn't let nobody help me, where would I be,
Yeah.
So I definitely like that you had that one-on-one and you had a self-reflection. You had reflections that, it's not just about me, it's about my family, it's about the people I love, it's about my community. And I feel like that is very hard for young men to do. And I feel like, you did your thing. Like, I'm very, very proud of you that you let yourself open up and just talk about, your story and just have somebody be there to help you, that mentor, because I know that took you a long way. So I just want to say I'm proud of you. That was,
Appreciate
yes.
that.
Yeah. And I'm also just really thankful that, you're able to own who you are. I think for men in general, like, y'all feel bad. Well, anyone, not just men, but, we feel bad as human beings to admit when we're wronged or admit when we messed up. And I think the fact that you're able to accept it without, regret or without fear or without, knowing that if you went back, you would do it the same way because that's who you are. Like, I want to commend you for going to accept that because I know when we spoke earlier, like, you were, I don't want to say fearful, but you were wondering if, your stories made people think of you as a monster. And for me personally, like, I don't. Like Tiana said,
I don't either.
Like Tiana said, people make mistakes, and I'm really grateful that, you've come to accept that and you've come to recognize that I went from a place of being naive and, egotistical in that, nobody could touch you or that you were afraid to go to jail, and just realizing like, no, my actions have consequences. So I want to commend that, and I want to preface that, for this episode, we're not going into the details, but really focusing on the person and the transformation. So if you're here for like any other purpose besides, tapping into the mental, this might not be the right space because you're not going to get it. That's for sure. So one of the questions I have, you first mentioned when you were 13 and you did graffiti, being that young, like, how did you react and were you able to, I guess, analyze why you were doing what you were doing?
And to be honest, to answer your question, I could say No, at that time I didn't, you know, because I'm still young, and at that time, my focus was to be, you know, someone great, even if it meant, you know, gangbanging or drawing or doing graffiti, whatever the case may be. You know, everybody's trying to be someone, and personally, me being young age, I wanted to be someone great. But it didn't hit me until, like I said, until my final release and my last you know, conviction, and it's gonna stay like that, you know, because I don't ever plan on going back.
Period.
That you know, at the end of the day, that it's, you know, I came through a lot, and for me to accept the roles that I was playing before was a mistake, and I could say that it was a weight, it was a boulder on my shoulder. It was like a weight that I had to carry, you know, and it's like I cannot run away from it, because wherever I go, I had a thought that, oh, I might mess up or whatever, but I had to forgive myself in that state, because at the end of the day, if it wasn't up to that point where I was like, you know what, I was always blaming someone or myself for getting locked up. I had to be like, all right, you know what, you need to own up for your mistakes, and you need to apologize to yourself, because whatever you went through wasn't your fault. But at the same time, you also agreed to certain things that you could say that you know, you was aware of. Yeah. And so I was like, you know what, I apologize to myself and those I heard it along the way. And I do want to bring up something that she mentioned, that, you know, for men, sometimes we're raised to hide our emotions, you know, especially in communities where it's like, oh, you gotta toughen up, you be aight.
Toxic masculinity.
You know, it's not always like that.
Gotta be strong.
Because at the end of the day, feel me? You keep living a life like that, you're not gonna learn how to express yourself. You go to the real world, you know, you're not gonna survive, because you always hide your emotions. You know, people want to see that you were able to communicate and open up and
get in tune with yourself.
Express yourself.
I was about to say, because then you don't want to go into that thing where you're like depressed and you feel like, you know, the whole world is against you and it's only you. So I definitely feel that. Yeah.
And especially, you know, our young kings that want a relationship, sometimes you have to realize that you close yourself and not allow yourself to open up, you're just gonna be hurting your partner. Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, and even if that person wants the best for you, sometimes it's the trauma that we carry upon ourselves that we don't let ourselves express, because we are afraid to be hurt. We are afraid to, you know, to let someone in and just cut us deeper. Yeah. And that's something that I think that I will recommend that most young men that went through trauma, that experienced, you know, certain stuff, you know, that, you know, I think the best thing they could do is open up to a therapist, you know.
Heal themselves first.
Exactly.
I was just going to ask that. I was going to say, what do you think is one thing that, you know, they need inside the system to help young men or, you know, guys in general through their process? Like, what is one thing that you feel? I know you was talking about books and, you know, drawings, but what is one thing you feel like in the system they could use to help get you guys through until you guys get home? What is one thing that you would love to have, like you would have wanted to have, or would have helped you while you was in?
Well, I would say that, in a way, I would say that what would help and benefit, you know, people in order to grow, and, especially being locked up, is more programs. Because at the end of the day, there's programs that they offer us, you know, help after our release. But sometimes there's people who are facing, you know, a couple of years. Your life depends, you know, a lot of time in their hands. And they offer these programs, but these programs actually, they give up on you after certain years, after a certain time. Yeah. And we need people like that don't give up on them, that give them that, you know, that even when sometimes, you know, it may be, they feel like you closed in, like you locked in, like 24/7, that there's no escape. At the end of the day, or you also have, as a person, you know, you have to allow yourself to these programs to come in your life and make a change, because you got to realize that people who are locked up right now, they probably going through a lot themselves, and you know, and a lot of people see them as monsters and people who are criminals and stuff like that, but we need to see them as people who made mistakes and are just trying to get themselves back together at the same time, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
People who are confused and lost.
Yeah. So as I'm listening to your responses, you know, we're talking a lot about yourself, which obviously is not a bad thing. Like keep doing that. We're talking about, you know, your transformations and the fact that you're able to take a step back and reflect on the systems that oppress you, you know, that shows awareness, that shows knowledge, and that also just shows like passion to the circumstances that you were under and your dedication to change things. And I kind of want to shift the focus from there onto, you know, the communities closest to you, especially from that young age of like 13. I want to ask, like, at that time, you know, I don't want to assume that you were in school, but were you in school at that time?
At that time, I was in school, and it wasn't until actually you bring up a good topic, because it wasn't until high school that, you know, I was around that time that I got up. That when I came home, I remember I went to school, and I went to my therapist, and I'm like, yo, I don't even know if I'm graduating in time, because you know I'm trying to graduate. He came up to me and he told me, you might as well just drop out.
Wow.
And that made me feel tight. Like I was upset. I was mad. I was like, you know what? And I believed it. And that's exactly what I did. You know, I dropped out. And I guess that affected me later on, because I was like, I didn't start to realize it afterwards. I was like, I should have never listened to him, you know, because at the end of the day, who tells their student, you know, just drop out? Right. You know, it should have been a little bit of hope at least. But to understand that sometimes that when you come home from prison, you know, or jail, and you trying to return back to school, you know, people don't communicate. People don't look at you eye to eye anymore. They just look at you as another person who's been in jail, and they expect you to go back anytime soon.
Yeah. And as a follow-up question, I was going to ask you, like, being 13 and being in middle school or whatever, you know, grade it was, how was that transition for you? Because not only is it like a disconnection from other young teenagers who are, you know, barely reaching that adulthood or that, you know, older stage of being a teenager, you also have their parents. You know, we're 13. You know, some parents are still walking their teenagers to school. Like, how was that experience, feeling judgment from multiple parties at once while still being, so, you know, a baby?
Yeah.
I guess it was traumatizing, because to this day, I still feel kind of insecure about me, you know, being around people who have never been locked up, because at the end of the day, it was for me, like, going to school, I'll be like, yo, don't hang around that kid because he's been locked up. He might get you locked up too if you hang around him. That's how I grew up, you know, stay away from that kid. I was always that kid. So growing up, you know, I had to learn that I had to set boundaries with certain people, because due to the fact that their parents don't want me to be around them. So it was traumatizing.
Yeah, to like force you to grow up, because these are your peers. Like, you
are
are
same
young.
age as them. Yeah.
You want to be around people. You want to meet new people, but it's like you have to be an adult when you were only 13 and tell, you know, these young kids, I can't be around you. And, you know, like, I'm 19, I'm still learning how to set boundaries, and I can't even tell people I can't be around you for the betterment of myself. So I can't imagine going 6 years back and telling somebody, oh, I can't be around you. The most I could tell, you know, somebody else at that age, oh, I don't like you. I can't imagine that.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about family-wise. So you do have sisters and you have a brother, correct? You have younger sisters?
Yeah, I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers.
3 sisters and 2 brothers. So what would you say, like, to your sisters? Like, if you had to, like, say anything to them, just to, you know, now, what would you actually say to them?
To be honest, I don't really say much to them. You know, they understand who I am, but I could also say that I have put them through a lot. You know, like I said, I was young, reckless, and naive. And so I was thinking, you know, that a man was capable to do anything he wanted, right? And so I was trying to, you know, run the house. But I do want to say that, you know, we argued a lot. And that's something that I would kind of regret. That I would look back and say that, you know, I apologize for that, you know, that at the end of the day, you know, they looked out for me. They were the only females that ever looked out for me when I was locked up. And so I respect that, you know, to the fullest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think
Okay.
it's really important to note that you are the only guy on this podcast. So you bring a different perspective, a different role. And, you know, because of the fact that we're talking about gender roles and you feeling like you were the man of the house, so you could do X, Y, and Z without limit. I guess my main question is, do you think that because you didn't have much of an example of like a different kind of man that you were able or you felt pressure to be this way? And my second question is, you know, did you think that you accepted these toxic gender roles and therefore you projected it onto your sisters and potentially, you know, belittled them or argued with them in ways that weren't necessary at that time?
Well, I would like to start off with your question, as number two, that I do believe that the actions that I was doing, giving out, was because of the fact that I live in a toxic household, right? That my family, we're full of immigrants, right? We come from Guatemala. And so, our expectations from my mother and my father was to thrive into this country and do better for ourselves, right?
The classic immigrant story, yeah.
Want to do
But
better.
due to the fact that the community we grew up around was full of violence, that I accepted that role. I grew up upon it.
Do you think that the lack of having like a different male role made you confined or pressured to assume the one that you did? And then my second question was, because of these gender roles that you came to accept and got into, do you think that you projected them onto the females or the women in your close family in ways that were probably unnecessary now that you look back onto it? Because you were talking about all the arguments that you now regret and the sympathy and apology that you have.
Yeah, I would like to say that. Well, like I said, my parents come out of an immigrant. Well, I come out of an immigrant household. My parents are from Guatemala. But my father, he grew up with no parents, right? He basically grew up raising his whole family. So for him, trying to be a player, a father figure was difficult for him. And I don't blame him, and especially that he joined the military in his country. For him, it was always being strict. It was always I can say, we would get weapons and stuff like that. It was normal in the household. But the thing is that to open up our emotions, it was never something that we would consider, normal. It would be awkward for us to even say, sorry, or we just sometimes brush it under, the rug, and not express it. And that's how we grew up. It's just, I guess, hiding emotions, and it was toxic for me. That's how I grew up. Whatever, if I did something wrong, it was whatever, it is what it is. That's how we seen it, and I feel bad that my father didn't grow up with no parents, because I understand that it must have been hard for him,
Right.
and also for my mother, who grew up in an abusive household. She comes home, she tries to make the best out of all of us and take care of us as much as she can. It's always, when two toxic people always get together, it's always going to be, and there's no healing and there's no talking about emotions, stuff like that. It becomes, it drags on, with the rest of everybody else who lives with them. And that's how we grew up. We would argue with my siblings and all that because of the fact that, like I said, there wasn't no communication.
So you feel like if you would have had that communication, maybe the toxicness wouldn't have been so toxic. Like maybe it would have been better if you guys had that communication between like your mom and your dad, and maybe you probably wouldn't, had that same thing, like that same talk aggressiveness with your sisters. You think if you had that communication?
Well, I would think that it would go with anything in general in life, right? That things would have gone more smoother. That but who am I to say anything? I feel like everything that happened to this point happened, and it's something that I gotta learn from it. Even if it didn't, it did happen. Like the toxicity, that's something that I gotta pay attention and grow from it, and never not make the same mistake as later on in the future. I bring kids and stuff like that. I would like to say though that I could say that my mother tried her best in trying to bring everybody together, you know, and I appreciate that from her, you know, because I know it's not easy when everybody's not on board in the ship.
Yeah.
It's definitely not easy.
Yeah. So I have a question. Just to switch the narrative from, you know, being reflective, and I want us to be in the moment, in the now. You know, you're here, you're doing your thing, and I just want to give you time to, you know, just talk about yourself. What are you doing now? You know, amp yourself up, give yourself a platform.
I'm about to say, we see this if only you knew what's going on.
Well,
Look like somebody drew that.
Well, for starters, I did this logo right now.
Yeah.
So that's something positive, you know, trying to help out, you know. And I'm trying to do community activism, you know. I think it's important for people who've been hurt and traumatized by everything they've been through. You know, it's important for us who came out the mud, you know, to give back in return. You know, it's only right because at the end of the day, it's what created us, but it's also something that we got to give in return out of, you know, they say that when you give back, you receive 10 times forward.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking for nothing in return, but my loyalty, you know, from everybody that I work with and just, you know, I want to build something for myself. So I could say that I'm also helping, you know, young people advocate, you know, if they need advocate, I'm there for mentor. I'm trying to show them that life doesn't always have to be in the same path that you always grew up on. It's not an excuse to live on. You know, there's always different routes and ways to proceed about things, you know. I remember someone told me there's always a second option, right? There's always options. And I didn't believe that at first because I'm like, how can you give me options when that option is not there, when I'm facing one thing? But in time, I learned that there's always going to be options. There's always going to be that. It may not seem it because there's tunnel vision, but if you really think outside the box, you could basically break out of any situation, you know?
That's true. That's a valid point. That really is a valid point. You can't just sit here and think, you know, you can't be one-minded. You know, you have to think about all your different options because if you one-minded, you're gonna stand at one path. It's different paths out here to get you to different roads and different highways. Like you take it and you do what you can with it. Like you make the best of whatever that you have. And I think that is definitely important to know. And
just to finish that off though, like I really believed in that philosophy for a long time, I'm telling you. So if I broke out of the philosophy, I believe anybody can break out of the philosophy. It's not just about, you know, living in that one-time moment. It may seem like that because it's something that you don't want to go through, but if you really allow yourself to meditate and process everything that's going through, there's always going to be an option, a different route to break through, you know?
Yeah, that's true. So another question that I'm thinking of, you know, we all have identities, and you're a Hispanic young man who has parents that are immigrants. So if you had to talk to just a general body of men, women, non-binary individuals, or people who don't have, you know, a history of incarceration, if you had to talk to a general group of people with, you know, black, white, race, whatever, it doesn't matter, what would you say is the one message that you can transfer to anyone, no matter what their past or no matter, you know, how they identify?
Well, to be honest, I would like to say this to everybody, not just certain groups, right? That regardless of the situation or whatever you're going through, whatever you feel like you feel like at that moment is there for the rest of your life, like a obstacle, you gotta remember that when you go through that obstacle, it might give you cuts and bruises, but at the end of the day, your body always gonna heal. So when you finish crossing that obstacle, you're gonna learn the value of what the emotion that you felt that you was going through that time, and you're gonna learn how to process it even better. So I would say that, and breaking it down in more easier terms is basically allow yourself to heal. You know, allow yourself to go through that obstacle, learn from it. Don't use it as an excuse for it to be something that you will consider, that it hurts you, but you can't be like that forever. You gotta learn to walk through it, walk through fire.
Walk through fire. Yeah. That's walk through fire. Listen, sun's gonna burn, but you're gonna get through it, right? We're gonna get through it.
Sometimes you gotta run.
Right, I gotta do a real quick run through it, okay?
Yeah.
Skip a little bit.
So we drop in all these gems, giving all these life lessons, making little prophecies here and there. But I want to get into, the action. Like if you had to tell somebody, okay, you have to heal, you have to work on yourself. I'm telling myself to work on myself. I can tell myself that all day long. We can tell myself that all day long. But how do you do that in the now? Like, what do you do on a day-to-day to heal, your past child, your inner child, the child that was forced to grow way beyond his years before it was his time, or, the child that didn't really get to be a child because they were in and out of the system? Like, what do you do to heal yourself while also building an empire for you and generations to come?
Well, that's a good question, actually.
Yeah, that is.
Thank y'all. Thank you.
That's us. I was on the path with you. Okay.
You have to realize that when you walk through these obstacles, like you say, the challenges that you're facing through the moment, you have to understand that sometimes it's your circle. It's people you hang around with, that bring you down and make you stuck in that environment. Sometimes you need to find somebody who's going to help you grow, as a mentor, or somebody who's willing to be there, a friend who's willing to watch you grow, right? You have to be around people who are going to constantly push you to be a better person. You can't just be around people who's going to be like, we be all right, whatever, there's something, pushing on. It's more like allowing yourself to realize that you're going through something, and you want to look at positivity. You want to change everything that you don't feel comfortable with at the moment, the environment, the situation. You got to learn how to conquer it without damaging anything around you. You want to learn how to heal properly by saying, you know what, I forgive myself. This is what happened and that's behind me. How are we gonna process it? How am I gonna do better from tomorrow? What is tomorrow gonna bring me? Am I gonna be a millionaire tomorrow? Then what I gotta do what I gotta do today to be that millionaire tomorrow? So I would say in a way that it's that's more like my philosophy. That's how I encourage myself to heal and process.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for all of that.
All of everything. Listen, the spills, I think that everybody needs to listen, tune in, understand. Everybody needs to know. I'm trying to see more drawings in the world, okay, in museums, something.
More poems.
Right. Look, right. Journal. Okay, listen, I need a poem with a drawing, all of it mixed together with your name at the bottom, okay? Yep. So this is great. I thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for all the great tips. Thank you for just allowing, just being open in general. I want you to keep doing what you're doing, keep focused, keep inspiring the youth and telling your story to them so that they know that you could be better, you could do better. Just keep your mind and head focused. I definitely want you to keep talking that.
Thank you. And I also want to thank y'all for allowing me to feel comfortable enough to express myself and tell my story, and also the platform that allowed me to tell my story in the first place. Right. So, credits to everybody who allowed me to be who I am today.
Of course.
Thank you for being you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is my story. Now I'm Elias Hernandez, and tomorrow I'm a civil rights attorney. Oh. So watch me.
Yeah.
You're watching. Yeah.
My name is Elias Hernandez, and now that I shared my story, now that I would love for you to share your story online. We offer resources, peer support groups. You can find us on the website. We offer mentorship, education resource centers, and you can also look us up on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you.